The earth was quiet on December 20th. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you think nothing important is happening. Streets still echoed with footsteps, candles still burned in windows, soldiers still marched under Roman banners, and people still went to sleep believing tomorrow would be just another ordinary day. But above that quiet world, far beyond the stars that human eyes could see, heaven was anything but silent. This was not a night of rest in the courts of God. This was a night of preparation. Angels moved with urgency, not chaos, but purpose. There was no confusion in heaven, no panic, only a deep, holy awareness that time itself was narrowing. What prophets had written centuries earlier was no longer distant. What kings had searched for in vain was now days away. The word that had spoken creation into existence was preparing to step into that creation as flesh. 4 days before the birth of Jesus, heaven knew exactly where history was headed. And yet, heaven also knew something earth did not. No human calendar marked this moment as sacred. No temple bell rang. No priest announced that the Messiah was about to arrive. The religious leaders were busy protecting their power. The political rulers were obsessed with control. The poor were trying to survive another cold night. Everyone was looking in the wrong direction. But heaven was watching Bethlehem. Angels who had waited since the dawn of time were finally being assigned roles they had longed for but never expected to see fulfilled. Some were sent to observe. Some were sent to stand ready. And a chosen few were preparing to speak words that would shatter the silence of centuries. Because God had spoken once, long ago, in the Garden of Eden. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head. That promise had echoed through heaven for generations. Angels remembered it. Demons feared it. Humanity had forgotten it. And now, 4 days before the child was born, the fulfillment of that promise was so close that heaven could feel it. There was movement in the unseen realm. Not the kind that shakes mountains or splits seas, but the kind that changes everything without making a sound. The enemy was watching too. Satan had been watching Israel for centuries, hunting bloodlines, provoking violence, stirring pride, spreading corruption. He knew a Savior was promised. He knew a Messiah would come. But he did not know the day. He did not know the hour. And on December 20th, he did not know that the answer lay in a tired young woman resting in a crowded town. That was the mystery of God. The greatest invasion of darkness would not be met with armies, but with a baby. Not with thunder, but with breath. Not with fire, but with flesh. And heaven understood the weight of that paradox. The angels knew that when the Son of God entered the world, the balance of eternity would shift. Every kingdom built on fear would begin to crumble. Every chain forged by sin would one day break. Death itself would be placed on a countdown it could not stop. Yet none of that would look impressive at first. There would be no crown, only a feeding trough. No palace, only borrowed shelter. No royal announcement, only shepherds standing in a field. And on December 20th, heaven was rehearsing restraint. Because angels longed to sing, but they were not allowed yet. They longed to declare, but the time had not come. Heaven was holding its breath, waiting for the precise moment when glory would touch dust. Meanwhile, prophecy was locking into place with terrifying precision. Bethlehem was not a coincidence. It was written. A small town, overlooked, underestimated, carrying the weight of Micah's words, "Out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Heaven had marked that location long before Rome ever counted its citizens. Long before Joseph packed his tools. Long before Mary felt the first movement of the child inside her. The census that forced them there was not a political accident. It was a divine alignment. God had used empires before, and he was using one again without its knowledge, without its consent. On December 20th, angels watched as Rome believed it was exercising power, unaware it was fulfilling prophecy. They watched as Joseph worried about shelter, unaware he was walking in obedience that prophets would speak of for generations. They watched as Mary rested, unaware that heaven was counting down the days. And somewhere beyond the visible realm, darkness stirred. The enemy sensed proximity, not clarity. Something was wrong. Something was aligning too perfectly. Too many ancient words were converging at once. Too many promises were coming due. But pride blinded him. He searched for strength and missed humility. He looked for power and ignored obedience. He watched thrones and overlooked mangers. That was always his weakness. He could not imagine that God would win by becoming weak. He could not imagine that eternity would step into time as an infant, unable to speak, unable to walk, unable to defend himself. And heaven knew this confusion would be his downfall. December 20th passed quietly on earth. No miracles broke the sky. No angels appeared yet. No star shone brighter than the rest. And that silence was intentional. Because God was teaching the world a lesson it would take centuries to understand. That salvation does not always announce itself with noise. That redemption often arrives unnoticed. That the most important moments in history can happen while the world is asleep. And heaven waited. Angels stood ready, not with swords, but with songs. Not with judgment, but with good news. They were moments away from proclaiming something the universe had never heard before. Not law. Not warning. But joy. Good news of great joy for all people. Those words were forming already. Heaven could feel them gathering, like breath before a shout. But they would not be released until the child arrived. Until the Word became flesh. Until eternity entered a stable. And so December 20th ended the same way it began, quietly. Mary slept. Joseph watched over her. Bethlehem remained unaware. And heaven, wide awake, waited 4 more days for the moment when silence would finally break, and the story of the world would change forever.